everybody. I hope you're having a fantastic Friday and a fantastic month so far. Sorry I've been kind of absent, been dealing with some stuff, but I'm going to try and get back to my regular routine here. Thank you all for being patient. Now, today's Freaky Friday is a story that my older brother gave me. This happened to him when he was a kid, and as said in the story, kind of defined his way of thinking about like spooky stuff and hauntings and everything like that. So, I hope you guys enjoy, okay? Alright, let's get this going. Have you ever experienced something that made you question everything you believe? It doesn't have to be extreme or dramatic. Sometimes the things that change our perspective can be small or minimalistic. My brother will never forget the day his world was uprooted, when he had to come to terms with the reality that supernatural might be real. Now, this story is told from his perspective. I hope you all enjoy. I was about to start 7th grade, and my summer vacation was coming to an end. Throughout that summer, I had spent a great deal of time with my friend TJ, who had recently moved into a massive house his dad had spared no expense to build. While watching the house be built from the ground up, we would go to the site and play games in the incomplete basement. The only landmark we had once the walls started filling out was a small plastic chair that sat in a small section of the basement by the water heater. Eventually, my curiosity took over, and I asked TJ why this small chair was even at the site. It was the same type of chair that you would find in a kindergarten classroom, no more than 1.5 feet tall, dark navy blue plastic, L-shaped seat, and a slender silver legs. The chair was covered in a thin layer of debris from the construction, and all the workers were much too tall to use the chair comfortably. TJ looked at the chair when I asked, with a strange look on his face that was unlike anything I'd seen from him before. He dismissed it with a joke, and the topic never came up again. But I couldn't shake an uncertain feeling whenever I'd see it. Near the end of the summer, the house was finished and TJ's family had moved in. The house was enormous. Even now I can't comprehend how massive it had been. 8 large bedrooms, not including the master, 5 full bathrooms with showers, a theater room with a sub-kitchen attached, 2 family rooms, a massive den with 6-foot windows from floor to ceiling. And that doesn't include the upper floor, where I never ventured. If you wondered, you could get lost. Each time I went to TJ's new house, I would get a dizzy feeling. My head would spin, and my energy levels would drop. So I would limit my visits to once a week. I assumed I was reacting to the fresh paint or the new vents, and eventually that feeling would go away. But that made TJ's invites harder and harder to turn down. He asked if I wanted to have a sleepover that weekend. He wanted to have a final all-nighter before school, since neither of our parents liked the idea of sleepovers during the school year. I told him I couldn't because I was going to need time to stop feeling dizzy from the last visit. TJ was always the one cracking jokes and easing tense moments with laughter, which is why the look on his face after my comment is forever etched in my memories. He stared at me with wide eyes. His face had gone pale, and a drop of sweat slid down the side of his face. His breathing had become shallow, almost labored, and he looked scared. He broke the silence by asking if I had been feeling dizzy after spending time at his house. When I confirmed, he clapped and jumped to his feet. He explained that his parents had dismissed his concerns and blamed on the suspicion that he missed their old house. Every day he would feel dizzy to the point of nausea, and only felt better when he would come to my house. He begged me to spend the night so he could show me what was causing the feeling. He wouldn't tell me what the cause was until I stayed over. So, reluctantly, I agreed. That Friday night, that sleepover was the catalyst that shattered my understanding of the world. The day I came face to face with something I couldn't explain. I arrived at TJ's house, sleeping bag under my arm, and then we made our way down to TJ's room, which was in the basement. His room was at the end of the hall, at the bottom of the stairs. Between his room and the stairs was a large theater room, closets that stored blankets and pillows for guests, and the water heater closet. If you walked in the opposite direction of the hallway, you would find a family room, another bedroom, and a large cold storage. We made our way to his room, and he locked the door behind us. He paced around his room before he finally started talking. "So how do you feel?" he asked. I shrugged. "Fine. I just got here, so I don't feel dizzy yet," I replied. TJ nodded, rubbing his chin as he studied me. "Do you remember asking me about the chair when we played during the construction?" he asked. I nodded and placed my sleeping bag on the floor. "You made a joke that it was used for timeout," I said. He took a step toward me. "I didn't really know where it came from," he whispered. I gasped, overly dramatic to emphasize the sarcasm. "Really? I would have never guessed," I smirked. But his expression didn't change. "I know usually we joke, but I need you to be serious," he said, peering over his shoulder toward the door. I snorted. "You need me to be serious?" I asked, my tone sharper than I intended. "Okay, serious talk. I won't make any more jokes," I said, ignoring my annoyance and trying to hide it. He nodded. "Thank you. Now let me explain what I've learned," he whispered. To simplify his story, he told me that nobody on the construction crew knew where the chair came from. Anybody who moved the chair or sat in it would get extremely sick. It would end up in the hospital. Their sickness would vary from food poisoning to pneumonia, so the crew avoided the chair when possible. Whenever TJ would go to the house with his dad, he would find the chair in the room his dad needed to check on. And the closer he got to the chair, the more dizzy TJ would get. After the explanation, we sat in silence. It was unnerving, and I was starting to think maybe TJ was messing with me. I finally broke the silence. "So what does it all mean? The house is built, so the chair is gone, isn't it?" TJ went pale. "I should show you," he said, standing and walking toward the door. We walked down the hall and stopped in front of the water heater closet. "Feeling dizzy yet?" he asked. I felt cold as I eyed the door, trying to quell my fears and settle my nerves. "No, not dizzy yet," I lied, as I stood at the closet door, my head spinning. He opened the door, and there it was. The chair. The construction debris was gone, but it had been replaced with a layer of dust, and it was strange. It looked like the chair had been in there for years, but the whole family had only moved in a few weeks before. He closed the closet door, but I forced myself to remember what was on the other side. I memorized the way the chair was facing, and the odd white marks on the concrete floor. "The chair never left. It's still here, right where it was when we found it," he said, taking a step back from the door. We walked back to his room, and he locked the door behind us again. "So, just throw it away. It might make you sick for a day, but it'll be gone. Problem solved," I said in a shaky voice. His expression hardened. "Aaron, I've thrown it away already. I've thrown it away at least 5 times. He pointed at the door behind him. "I've thrown it out in our garbage can, the neighbor's can, the dumpster at the church, down the road. It doesn't matter. The chair always comes back. And it's in that room every time," he said with a sharp tone. "I can't explain it, but that chair is possessed. I laughed, thinking he was messing with me. Good one, but I'm not falling for that, TJ. I rose to my feet and headed for the door. I'll throw it away. Prove that you're trying to spook me, I said. As I unlocked the door, Aaron, I'm not messing with you. The chair is haunted, he said as he stood up to stop me. I opened the door and turned to him. Then you have nothing to worry about. It should come back right after I throw it away, I said, before walking out of his room. I froze in the hallway, staring down that hall. There, at the base of the stairs, positioned facing me, was the chair. The hair on my arms stood on end, and my arms started to look like chicken skin. The cold I felt by the door earlier was touching my toes through my socks. TJ peeked past me and gasped. I was trying to tell you, the chair does weird things when I'm home alone, he whispered. I looked back at him, air caught in my throat. What do you mean, it does weird things when you're home alone? But we're not home alone, I hissed with a sharp whisper. I didn't want to say anything before you got here, he said softly. My parents aren't home. They're visiting my grandparents, and my sister's tagged along. I sidestepped back into his room and shut the door behind us. I grabbed him by the collar and pulled him close to me. You knew we would be here home alone, I shouted. And supposedly that thing does strange things when you're alone? So you set me up. You put me in a position where I have to face a ghoul on the last Friday night of my summer? He grabbed my hand softly, moving my hands from his collar. I can't do this alone. I know you're mad, but I didn't know what else to do, he mumbled. I slumped into his desk chair, running my hands through my hair. So, do you have a plan? I asked. He shook his head. I need help, and you're better at research. TJ, this isn't some Scooby-Doo episode. We need to get rid of that thing. Research won't do us anything, I said, narrowing my eyes. What have you tried besides throwing it out? What else could I do? Throwing it out should have worked, he said. You could burn it, destroy it, bury it. There are tons of ways we can get rid of it, I said, sitting upright in the chair. We can't burn it. Last thing I need is nosy neighbors calling the cops because there's a fire in the yard. But we can try destroying it. My dad keeps his tools in the garage, he said, a glimmer in his eyes for the first time in a week. Great. Too bad the only way upstairs is blocked by a haunted preschool seat, I said, throwing my hands up in the air. TJ smirked. Who said that was the only way upstairs? He asked. He opened his closet door, exposing a thick wooden ladder. I peered in the closet, following the ladder through the ceiling. My dad built secret passages throughout the house. He claimed it was for entertaining his future grandkids, but I think he just wants to fulfill a dream from his childhood. I slapped him on the back. This is so cool. Where does it go? Second floor. Up to one of the guest rooms, he replied. I chuckled. Perfect. But what if we don't need it? I asked, looking at the bedroom door. TJ swallowed hard, and he stepped towards the door. Should I look? He asked. It can't hurt, I said. He opened the door and peeked into the hall. It's not down there anymore, he said, letting out a sigh of relief. We walked out in the hallway, both holding our breath as we took quiet steps. TJ grabbed an aluminum bat and raised it to a swinging stance. The house had darkened, only a few wall lights on in the basement illuminating things. I glanced at the clock at the end of the hallway. 8:47 p.m. I've only been here for 45 minutes, I hissed, looking back at TJ. Sorry, we're in for a long night, he whispered. I'm gonna kill you, I whispered back. After the chair? Go ahead, he said quietly. He smirked as we reached the end of the hallway. He peered up the stairs and quickly recoiled. What the hell? He hissed, squeezing the grip of the baseball bat. What's wrong? I whispered, stepping back from the stairs. It's up there. It's never left the basement before. His voice rising in volume, sounding shaky. Are you serious? I asked, peeking up the stairs. I felt my stomach twist into a knot. The chair was indeed at the top of the stairs, but only for a literal second. The chair began tumbling down the stairs, loud crashes echoing throughout the empty house. We both screamed and tripped over each other while trying to reach his room. We slammed the door behind us, both staring at each other with pale, white faces. "What the hell happened?" I hollered. TJ presses back against the door. "It has never moved while I looked at it," he said, his hands shaking against the wood on the door. "How did it fall down the stairs?" I shook my head. It was at the top of the stairs, and then it just started rolling down the stairs. Nothing even touched it. My voice quivering as my head spun. I couldn't process what was happening. I had never admitted to believing in ghosts out loud, and I wasn't sure what I really believed. But now, face to face with something I couldn't explain was testing my beliefs. The house felt quiet again as we caught our breath. Do we dare go out again?" TJ asked in a mumble. I reached for the doorknob. TJ stepping away, letting me test my curiosity. I opened the door a crack and peeked out into the hall. There, just outside the door, the chair was facing towards the door. "Shit!" I shouted as I slammed the door closed. "This isn't funny, TJ. If you're trying to mess with me, I am done. Tell me you've got someone out there moving the chair," I shouted. My entire body was shaking. "What did you see out there?" he asked. "Why would I be messing with you? I'm freaking out too. This would be a shitty joke to play, don't you think?" he snapped. The tone of his voice, the fear in his words, it showed me the truth. He was just as scared as I was. "Sorry, I got freaked out," I said somberly. The chair was right outside the door. He shook his head. "We're going up the ladder. It's trying to keep us trapped down here for whatever reason." He picked up the aluminum bat off the floor and moved into the closet. "Let's go. We're ending this." A scraping sound filled the room. My eyes locked on the bedroom door. Something was different. Something was scratching the door, and it didn't sound like plastic on wood. It sounded almost like claws scratching the door from the other side. "What the hell was that?" I asked as I headed toward the closet. TJ stared at the door with a look of horror. "Hurry, we gotta go," he said, his eyes wide and fixed on the door. I didn't wait. I rushed to the ladder and climbed as quick as I could. At the top of the ladder was a wooden trapdoor. I pushed it open and exited the secret passageway into a closet identical to TJ's, except for the ladder. I stepped out into the guest room and noticed a stack of metal pipes for assembling bed frames. I grabbed one and turned to face TJ. "Hopefully I don't need to use this," I said. TJ lifted a finger to his lips as he slowly shut the closet door behind him. "Do you hear that?" he whispered. I listened to try and hear what he meant. There was a noise, but I couldn't tell what it was. "What is that sound?" I asked. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end. TJ froze, slowly turning to look at me. "It sounds like a chair being dragged across the kitchen floor," he said in a shaky voice. We rushed to the stairs that would take us to the ground floor. "Oh, you can't be serious," I said, looking at the chair at the bottom of the stairs. "What do we do now?" I asked, squeezing the pipe in my hand. "I don't understand," TJ mumbled, the baseball bat falling out of his hand. It's moving so much more than I've ever seen," his voice sounding drained of energy. The clatter of the bat made me jump, startling me more than the chair had ever done up to now. We stared at the chair, neither saying anything for a time. We stared at the chair, neither of us making a move or saying anything for a long time. And then I had the idea. "I got it. I know what to do," I said, putting my hand on his shoulder. "You stay here and keep your eyes on it. I'll go back down and sneak past it." "What tool do I need to grab?" I asked, trying my best to sound brave. "The axe. Grab the axe," he muttered. I patted his shoulder and made my way to the secret ladder. After reaching the bottom, I hurried into TJ's room. I felt the air in my lungs lock up as I got close to the bedroom door. The door was wide open, and small scratch marks were visible on the door. They weren't deep scratches, but they were permanent. "What the fuck?" I muttered, saying the F word for the first time in my entire life. I kept my panic in check as I squeezed the pipe. I ran through the door and down the hallway. I hurried up the stairs and was met with TJ hollering my name. "Aaron, hurry! Something feels off about this!" he shouted. I reached the top of the stairs, standing in a space in the kitchen. I looked around the room and began feeling dizzy again. "I'm in the kitchen!" I hollered, moving toward the garage door. I winced and grabbed the... "I'm in the kitchen!" I hollered, moving toward the garage door. I winced and grabbed my head with my hand, trying to stop my head from spinning. "Aaron, hurry, it's moving!" TJ screamed. Behind me, I could hear the chair dragging itself through the kitchen, across the hardwood floor, twisted the garage door and opened the door and slammed it shut. I stood in the dark garage, letting my eyes adjust to the darkness. Against the wall near the door was a light switch, illuminating through the black of dark. I flipped it, and the garage lit up, confirming TJ's story of no one being home. All the family's cars were gone, and off in the corner were several tools hanging off the wall. I pulled the axe off the wall as well as a large sledgehammer. Both tools were extremely heavy for my 12-year-old arms, but I kept moving. My friend was counting on me, and there was no way of knowing if I'd make it to the garage again. I reached the door, rested the axe against the wall, and grabbed the door handle. I opened the door and felt a rock form in my stomach. Right in front of the door, the chair was sitting, with the seat facing me. "Shit, shit, shit!" I hollered as I slammed the door shut. I recalled the image and couldn't help but notice the dust was undisturbed all over it. No markings of fingers moving through the dust. No butt prints on the seat. It was as if the chair hadn't been moving throughout the house. I had hoped to see the spots where the dust had been touched or disturbed. It would help me prove someone was faking it or moving it, but now I had no explanation for what was happening. I took a deep breath and tightened my grip on the sledgehammer. I threw the door open and grabbed the chair. The feeling I felt while holding the chair was the final push to make me believe in spirits and the supernatural. It felt like my body had frozen over. My bones creaked as I moved. The cold garage floor that once stung my feet now burned. The hand holding the chair was a different story. While my body felt cold, my hand felt like it was holding a metal bar that had been left in a fire. It felt like the skin on my fingertips was about to burst into flames. I let out a breath, a small cloud of cold air, leaving my lips. I could physically see my breath, and the chill in my bones made it harder to move. The 5 steps it took to pull the chair into the garage felt like the hardest chore I'd ever have to do. I put the chair down and raised the sledgehammer over my head. With my hand removed from the chair and the temperature around me warming up instantly, "Fuck you!" I spat as I slammed the sledgehammer onto the seat of the chair. The legs of the chair bent under the force of the hammer. The plastic seat cracked and twisted away from the legs, and the dust jumped into the air from the chair, settled on the garage floor. TJ appeared in the doorframe to the garage. You crushed it," he said softly. He picked up the axe and walked over. "It's finally over!" he shouted as he raised the axe over his head. The axe crashed into the seat and sliced the plastic in two. TJ and I took turns smashing and slashing the chair, or what was left of it. And when we couldn't raise the tools over our heads anymore, we separated the pieces. TJ buried one, and I threw the other in the garbage. We went back into his room, and that feeling of dizziness never crept into my body. It was a sign that we had succeeded. The night rolled on, and we played GameCube and talked about our plans for the school year. And just when we were starting to fall asleep, I felt it. The dizziness swept through me, but it was weaker than before. It didn't make me feel nauseous, but it made standing up a challenge. TJ was out cold, snoring away, and nothing I did could wake him. I slowly opened the bedroom door and checked the hall. It was clear, But as I made my rounds around the basement, I walked towards the water heater closet, and that dizziness worsened. I opened up the closet door and stumbled backwards. The chair was there, and it was the exact same chair. The slash that split the chair in two was still there, but it was in one piece, completely rebuilt, and the dust covered it again. But the chair was facing away from the door, as if trying to hide from us. I slammed the door and ran back to TJ. I showed it to him, and we slammed the door shut. I checked the garage while he checked the hole where it was buried. Both pieces were gone, confirming the fear that we couldn't get rid of the chair. We stayed up all night. Both of us were too afraid to sleep. It seemed to be wandering the house, but it stayed away from TJ's room. In the morning, once the sun was up and the day had officially begun, TJ's parents came home. We told his parents about the night, and his mom sighed and asked us to show her the chair. Once she saw the chair, she told us where it came from. The chair had been TJ's, and it had been gifted to his cousins many years ago. After years of being used by younger cousins, it found its way into his cousin Hannah's life. She suffered from mental illness, and when she discovered that her husband had accidentally smothered her newborn child, depressed and broken by the loss of her baby, she ended up taking her life by hanging. The chair was the last thing that held Hannah up. His mother suspected that the chair was haunted by Hannah, trying to chase the family of the man that killed her child. Or the spirit of their baby had tried to reach her through the chair, and when she kicked the chair, the baby tried to find her by following the family from home to home. To this day, the house still has the chair in the water heater closet. TJ and I have talked about the chair, but we never touched it again, out of both fear and respect for whatever was attached to it. I spent the night at his house many times after that night, and the dizziness never really stopped happening. But when I would sleep over, I could hear scratching on the door or the chair dragging throughout the house. We just never went out of our way to find out what was going on. I still get goosebumps when I go to my children's parent-teacher conferences and have to sit down in one of those tiny little chairs that look identical to the chair that haunted that night.